Welcome to the Beat Reporter's Inbox, presented by Edward Jones. I'm Thomas Harding, the beat reporter for the Colorado Rockies on MLB.com, and with me today is Abby. You'll hear her voice asking the questions. Abby, what is our first question?
Our first question is from Henry, who's wondering, what are the challenges of trying to be a contender with such a young pitching staff?
This is a young and talented pitching staff that the Rockies have. I mean, you look at Kyle Freeland, who did so well on opening day, Antonio Senzatella, German Marquez, and of course Jeff Hoffman, who's given them such a lift. These are guys that were either drafted early or signed out of the Latin American program for good money, so you know they have talent. Here's what happens, though. The first time or so through the league, other hitters don't really know what they have. They haven't seen a lot of them. Then after that, there is video. There's a lot of study. And there's a lot more than in the minor leagues where when you're in AA, you're just worried about the bus getting there on time. Or in AAA, you're worried about your commercial flight landing on time. Now they've got all this time and all of this material to study you. So as you go on in your career, the hitters have made an adjustment. And you saw that during the early part of this 8-game losing streak. There were some really bad starts, and there were some starts. I specifically look at Kyle Freeland's start in Los Angeles, where the hitters kind of knew what was coming. And Kyle, when I talked to him beforehand, he knew that the hitters were on to him, and he knew he had to make adjustments. The next time out, though, against the Giants yesterday, he pitched much better. Same for Jeff Hoffman. He had that bad start against Arizona, then pitched very well a couple of games ago against the Giants. So as long as they can make those adjustments as the hitters adjust to them, then they can kind of stay ahead. But you will see some cases where teams, especially in the division where they've seen you multiple times during the regular season and also through spring training, will catch up to you. So that's one of the big adjustments that you have to have when you have a young pitching staff. Also, just the guys haven't been in it this long. The minors is a 144-game season. This is 162. And they haven't seen the type of playoff pressure that they hope to see this year. Right now with the Rockies in the wild card, you expect those games in August and September to be quite meaningful.
The Rockies have moved Antonio Senzatella to the bullpen, most likely just temporarily in an attempt to limit his innings. Can we expect the Rockies to do that with more of their rookie starters?
Bud Black, the manager, was asked about this yesterday, and he said that was a possibility. He's discussed a number of possibilities because, as I just said, the Major League season is a little bit longer. I thought it was a prudent move with Antonio Senzatella because he only threw 34 2/3 innings last year, had a couple of shoulder issues, also some family issues back in Venezuela. The Rockies did keep his strength up, though, by throwing him aggressively in the Latin American program after the season. But still, to go from 34 2/3 innings to a full major league load, I think it's smart to put him in the bullpen. Now you look at guys like Jeff Hoffman and Kyle Freeland and also German Marquez. They all have pitched pretty deep into seasons. I think Freeland went, 162 innings last year, and Hoffman went 150, and Marquez has probably gone a little bit more, but you still want to limit their innings a little bit, and it's not as if you put an expiration date on it. In other words, you don't want these guys to reach their innings limit on September 1st because you're going to need those games for the rest of the season. So what you're trying to do is spread out the innings, limit them now so they're strong in August and September and hopefully October. Or should I say Rocktober? That's what they call it around here.
Jessica is wondering, what does the future hold for Carlos Gonzalez, who is having a bad year and is now on the DL?
Yes, I'll tell you what, it's been kind of mysterious because we've watched Carlos for many years, and he will go through slumps, but then there'll be a period of time where you just can't get him out, and it usually lasts for a while. We thought it had happened during that road trip to Minnesota, Cincinnati, and Philadelphia, where he was tagging the ball, hitting home runs. Then he kind of reverted when he got back here. The question that I have is, how long has this shoulder injury been lingering somewhere in there? Now, he said he did it during one swing in the last homestand, but you just never know about these things because guys play with pain all the time. They need Carlos Gonzalez. They need his bat. But the other thing they need is him in the field also. Raimel Tapia has shown some speed, hitting ability. He has a nice arm. But the experience in right field of Carlos Gonzalez wins you ball games. So they're going to need him back, even though they have tested their depth and decided that guys like Gerardo Parra, who's on the DL right now, and Raimel Tapia can play and can win you games, you still need Carlos. So what you're hoping is that after this injury calms down, I don't know if he's going to go to the minors for some rehab games, but maybe this time off will give him a chance to fix some things with his swing. You know, there are a lot of moving parts in there. There's a leg kick. There are a lot of hands in there, and guys are getting them out off the plate. If he can start hitting strikes, he can hit the ball a long ways and help carry this offense.
Alan wants to know, what's the mood of a club whose losing streak has now reached 8 games?
It's funny, they lost 8 games, the 8th in a row in San Francisco, and the mood in the clubhouse was, yes, we have lost 8 games, but look at the record here. I mean, they're well above 500. They're in the wild card right now, and what I liked was hearing from a guy like Nolan Arenado said, hey, if you had told me our record would be 13 games above 500 right now, I'd take that. It doesn't matter how you got there. Now, they do need to obviously quell this losing streak. A couple of things about this team. They went out and got Greg Holland, who's won a World Series and been in a World Series. They have Ian Desmond. 5 of the last 6 years, he's been on a division champion. Also, Mark Reynolds, who has played under playoff pressure. So they have guys who've done it before, and that's really important to have just in case there's some panic that sets in. But what I like about this team is guys like Arenado stepping up and saying things like that. Charlie Blackmon, who nothing ever changes. He could get 3 hits or no hits. Usually it's 3 hits, and he's still doing the same pregame and postgame routines and not getting too excited or too down. And then I had a nice conversation with DJ LeMahieu in Los Angeles, and he was saying that in past years, maybe there would be a little bit of panic, or not necessarily panic, but wonder, gee, what's going to happen? But when I go back to spring training, the guys who have been on this team a while would look around and they'd see these young, talented pitchers, and they would say, wow, these guys are good. And that's what the Rockies are relying on. These guys are good. And you're going to get John Gray back on Friday against the Arizona Diamondbacks. At some point, Tyler Anderson hopefully will get that knee thing fixed. And also Chad Bettis, he's overcome the testicular cancer. And he may be a month or so from getting back on the mound. But at the end of last season, he was their best pitcher. So there's a lot of talent, and there's help on the way, so they're not panicking. Manager Bud Black, who's been around for a while and knows pitching, he's not panicking. They just can't let panic from the outside set in.
Michael's asking, what are the expectations from John Gray, who starts Friday at Arizona?
Yes, John Gray, love watching this guy pitch. He's a power pitcher. He was drafted 3rd overall. He was drafted for games like Friday night in Arizona. So, and he knows how to step up in those cases. He's a very calm guy, kind of an easygoing big fellow, and I think he has the right personality for what he's doing. So I'd like to see what happens. Now, you can't expect total perfection because he hasn't pitched in a major league game since April 13th. But if he can pitch them deep into the game, put them in position to win, and get on a roll, he has the type of arm that you could depend on later in the season. You want him to get off to a good start, but more importantly, you want him to pitch with some consistency like he did late last season.
This question is from Terrence. Is David Dahl going to be healthy enough to play at all this season?
That's a question that Bud Black keeps being asked, and he keeps saying yes to. He had that little bit of a rib cage issue. It's the 6th rib, and it's where the rib wraps around the back. So what happens is he can feel good doing exercise, running, lifting weights, but swinging the bat takes a lot of muscle control in the middle of the body, and it puts some stress on the rib cage. And every time he has ramped up the swinging, then the pain would come back. So the Rockies have been backing off. But they say it's a stress reaction, not a stress fracture. So it's just a matter of letting that little crack in the bone heal. And if that crack heals, he'll be back. Listen, you've got a long season here. And don't forget that in September, the roster expands to 40 guys. That's a good piece to have, whether it's starting a game or on your bench, because he showed with the power late last season that he can hit at this level.
This is from KD. What's the update on Gerardo Parra?
Yes, Gerardo Parra had that quad strain here at Coors Field on June 6th. and he's been working out, trying to get to the point to where he can sprint. Yesterday in San Francisco, or a couple days ago, I should say, in San Francisco, he was running with the bungee cord attached to him. He's doing everything he possibly can to get confidence in that, because what happened was it's a tear somewhere near where the muscle connects to the bone. So sometimes when you wrap up the activity, the pain comes, or you risk re-injuring it. So the Rockies are being very careful with it. We haven't heard an MRI result yet, but he does look good in moving around. I've watched him take batting practice. That looks pretty good. The question is at game speed. But what they're going to try to do is take their time with it and then get him back out there, because before he got injured, he was the guy that the Rockies went out and signed last year, the guy with some power and some speed and very good defense. And if he can provide some of that in a deep outfield, it really will make a difference down the stretch.
This question's from Isaac. Who do you think the Rocks are going to get at deadline, because they look like buyers?
They do look like buyers, but it's going to be a question when they get to that deadline. Here's why. They have built on young talent through the draft. They've traded for young pitching. Marquez, Hoffman, they came in trades for veteran players that the Rockies really like. So what the plan is to use as much as that depth for themselves as possible. So if you make a trade at the deadline, can you disturb that pitching depth that you have? They have some pretty good position players also. Some of them are being used in the major leagues. Can they disturb that? I do believe that they need to improve in the bullpen. That bullpen was one of the best in baseball for much of the season. I think it will get back to that. Every bullpen goes through a little bit of a lull. But what you find with contending teams is they'll go out and they'll get extra players that can pitch big innings, and maybe they'll be pitching the middle of the game instead of the end of the game, but it strengthens you throughout. That way, if your starter goes 5 or 6 innings, then you have another late inning arm that can pitch the middle innings, which really makes a difference when you're trying to win those games in July, August, and September.
Scott wants to know, what's the status on DJ LeMahieu?
Yeah, DJ had a little bit of a cramp in his groin a couple of days ago, and he's had this before, and usually he's been able to kind of massage through it without having to go on the 10-day disabled list. So he believes that is the case right now. We'll see in Arizona. He'll test it before the first game and just see where he fits in there. The fact that it is a 10-day disabled list instead of a 15-day disabled list may allow them to take a little bit more time to get him in there before making a decision. Once they make a decision, they can backdate the 10-day DL 3 days. So basically, if they decide in a few days, hey, DJ, you're not going to be ready in a couple of days, we're going to put you on the 10-day DL. It'll give them 7 days on the backside of that to get them ready.
Marshall wants to know, any thoughts on sending Murphy down to AAA and sending back up Hannigan?
I'll tell you, Murphy, he does have a whole lot of power potential, but he is a young catcher, so the Rockies could be very careful with him. Ryan Hannigan made a difference to this team when he was up as far as talking to the younger pitchers, and he came in not wanting to come in and just be the leader around there. He came in and listened to them, understood how they work. So if they decide to do that, then that will be a good thing for them. Hey, thank you for joining me on the Edward Jones Inbox. Join me next time.